Today I'm coming for Jean-Paul Sartre. In some ways it's a little redundant with Merleau. They were close. And they emerge in very much the same context into their Marxism. However, Sartre's even more extreme on this than Merleau, which is really sad and disturbing. The ultra enthusiast for human freedom becomes an ultra enthusiast for human servitude to the party. Okay, I know that's not what he thought he was doing. I know that's what he was doing, and he said it as clearly as possible. Now, Merleau, in this book, Adventures of the Dialectic, accuses Sartre of, quote, ultra-Bolshevism. Now, we've already seen Merleau defending Stalin's show trials, purges, and liquidations. But that wasn't enough for Sartre, who wanted to be a much more extreme than that, an ultra-Bolshevik. And this is what broke up Merleau and Sartre. I don't know, man. Now I'm asking for one thing. Was Simone de Beauvoir have a totalitarian politics? She must have, right? I don't know, man. I should look this up. But maybe her feminism pulled her back from the brink. Maybe her feminism was in tension with Marxism or whatever. Or I don't know, man. I should go look this up. But all these people were amazing in their Marxist totalitarianism. Now, also this is a miserable indictment of the history of existentialism. Okay, that Heidegger was a Nazi and Sartre was a Stalinist. Okay, man. And both those positions are incredibly incompatible with the basic insights of existentialism, I say. I insist. And it's pretty obvious, okay? But I'm not saying that a very clever person couldn't work for decades to try to make those things make sense together. And, Sartre definitely did between existentialism and Marxism. I mean, it's taken me a while to get this episode. I really should be reading for years to do this. Search for a Method by Sartre. This is all attempts to reconcile existentialism and Marxism, totalitarian Marxism. The Critique of Dialectical Reason by Sartre. Wow. It has brilliant moments, okay? Like, I've really been reading into this, okay? And, I read it many, many years ago. It has flashes of brilliance. It has an overall philosophical obscurity and a sort of disingenuous embeddedness in jargon that is intended to obscure the basic points, I guess, or get you from one to the other, existentialism to Marxism. But I'm just going to say this, Sartre betrayed in the most explicit terms his inspiring existential philosophy, which also had ridiculousness problems, right? Like the radical freedom portrayed in, existentialism as a humanism or whatever. Existentialism was a humanism, but then it became a Marxism, the very opposite of a humanism. Right? Now, the debate between Merleau and Sartre was concerned especially Sartre's book or series of essays collected in the book, The Communists and Peace. which is really the subject of most of this Merleau book. And they had a falling out and never reconciled, I guess, before Merleau's death. And the debate, I gotta say, these Marxist debates, even among these top-end intellectuals, strike me as so absurd and just so bent over to receive Marxist jargon. It was just crazy, okay? Like, the debate is about the relation of the party to the proletariat. Merleau thinks that the party and the proletariat cannot really be distinguished. Is this right? And Sartre thinks that the party is the proletariat, and there's no proletariat without the party, and all this shit. Okay. You know, reading this now, I gotta say, like, this is about, I mean, it's about the Soviet Union, I guess, but it's about nothing, dude. Like, what the fuck? Anyway, like, you know, I read this, you know, read a shitload of Sartre that uses the word proletariat in every sentence for, you know, hundreds of pages on end. And it's just an abstraction. It's just a word. I have no idea, man, after a while, what's going on or why. And the amazing thing, too, and Merleau and Sartre are arguing about who has the orthodox Marxist interpretation. To which I can only say, I thought you were better than that, okay? I thought you were philosophers, man. I thought you were thinking for yourself. I didn't think this was just a bend-over situation when y'all, people like Sartre and Merleau start having thoughts, but it is. Right? All they want is to capitulate to Marxism, which they both assert is untranscendable, and then they start hurling quotations from Lenin at each other to show each other that they're wrong. It's the most absurd schismatic bullshit you ever heard, all right? And it was roiling the French Communist Party or whatever. It's about Lefort or all these, maybe these other figures or whatever, but we don't have to discuss that. Let me try a few quotes from The Communists in Peace by Sartre. All right, so this is, okay. This is him, Sartre, talking about the party on page 115, the party on page 115 of The Communists in Peace. Far from being the delightful product of working-class spontaneity, it, the party, imposes itself imperatively on each individual. I want you to think, if you know anything about Sartre's existentialism, let this resonate against that. It imposes itself imperatively on each individual. It must be an order which imposes order and gives orders. This is the radical advocate of human freedom. It must be an order. The party must be an order which imposes order and gives orders. Liberality, enthusiasm, if they do come, will come afterwards. But to begin with, the party represents for each one the most austere morals. It is a question of assenting to a new life, of casting off a present personality. This is going to be a total transformation of you, bro. Weary, he is commanded, the proletariat, I guess, he is commanded to weary himself still more. Powerless, to throw himself blindly against a stone wall. As long as he is still outside, the praxis, that is to say, the approach to the class, appears to him to be a duty. But if it were necessary to justify the existence of a dominating and invariably over-exacting organization, I should base myself rather on necessity than on origin. If it were spontaneous, its authority would not be established, which proves that first impulses are the best. Instead of which, the party, wherever it comes from, derives its legitimacy from the fact that, first of all, it answers to a need. Without it, without the party, wow, what happened? Without the party, no unity, no action, No class. I'm reading off my Kindle. I didn't buy a copy of this book. No unity, no action, no class. There is no class. There is no proletariat without the party. This is what they're disagreeing about, Sartre and Merleau. Naturally, the great majority of workers do not go into it. Who can be a militant after 10 hours at a factory? But they cause the class to be born when they obey all the leader's orders. That's what causes the proletariat to be born. That they obey all the party's orders. Yeah, this is a very different philosopher than the guy who a few years before this was throwing down the radical existentialism, and reading Heidegger too. Okay, so then we have been seeing some of these conceptions of freedom in the West. No one's conception of freedom is more disturbing than Jean-Paul Sartre's. But it's, again, he's all Hegel all the time too, man. He's got a lot of Hegel. And his conception of freedom ends up being, he's an existentialist, all right. His conception of freedom ends up being Hegel, but worse. Freedom is doing what the party tells you to do. It is only, all right, is it to be understood, page 117 of The Communists in Peace, is it to be understood that the worker is passive? Quite the contrary. He transforms himself into action when he enters the class, that is the party, or when the party organizes him, and can assert his freedom only in action. But this freedom is a concrete and positive power, the power of finding out, of going further, of taking the initiative, of putting forward solutions. Okay, so far so good. Those do sound like freedoms. It is only by going beyond the immediate situation through movement together that this freedom can enrich it. Freedom to criticize, free speech, by contrast, not only causes the leader of the cell or the trade union delegate to frown, it also makes each individual afraid of the others, recalling as it does previous loneliness and dissension. So there's no dissent going to be permitted. In your freedom, it must at least be understood that criticism, when it is tolerated, cannot spring from spontaneity or the revolutionary instinct. The worker, transformed by the organization into its subject, finds his practical reality from the time of his metamorphosis when organized by the party. Whatever he thinks or does is from the time of his conversion, and that, in its turn, takes place within the framework of party policy. His freedom, which is simply his power to go beyond what is given him, and that does sound like an existentialist definition of freedom, a la Sartre. In other words, to act, is shown therefore at the heart of the essential reality, which is the organization. His freedom, the ability to go beyond, is shown at the heart of the essential reality, which is the party. He forms his thoughts on the problems presented to him by the party in accordance with the principles given to him by the party. In short, he does not judge the party in the light of policy whose principles, produced by his spontaneous reaction or by the contradictions of middle-class society, are engraved on his unconscious. Drawn on, formed, raised above himself by the party, he finds his freedom only in the power to go beyond each particular situation by acts within the organization and toward the common aim. In a sentence, it may be said that the party is his freedom. Well, of all the skull-crushing, stupidly evil definitions of freedom that we've been running into, and false as anything could possibly be, this one takes the cake. Jean-Paul, which is amazing considering where you were with freedom a few years before this. It's a shame what happened to you, bro. Really a fucking shame, dude. Like, what a great mind is here o'erthrown. Well, I know great mind might be. I would compare Sartre to Rousseau. I do think both their philosophies are an incredible welter of fairly contradictory material. And they're both real sharp, cool writers who really gravitate toward the sharpest formulations and who gave us some really memorable sentences. Hell is other people. All right. And also, Sartre was a great playwright and shit, okay? The plays really work. So the philosophical treatises, though, like Rousseau's, man, are just kind of like here and there, everywhere. Like, let's throw some shit at the wall and see what sticks. I feel like. All right. All right, now I guess I'll just want to hit one more passage here. Now I got to operate this Kindle. His stuff on Sartre. His Sartre stuff on Stalin. You who see in the wage-earning class and in the inhuman harshness of work conditions and means, the conditions and means of recasting the fundamental ideas of production, why do you not present Stalinism, and this is his characterization of Stalinism, as the harsh but unique means, the only possible means, of giving the unity of an army to the masses, or according to your way of speaking, as the expression of inflexible discipline which the proletariat takes on itself in integrating its last social changes. Inflexible social discipline. Was Jean-Paul Sartre able to was that an aspect of Sartre's personality, inflexible discipline? You will say, there is something else. This bureaucracy, Stalinist bureaucracy, exploits the workers, and there is your fairy tale. This bureaucracy can't exploit the workers. Differentiation of a minority. 2, creation of distance between the party and the proletariat by the very fact that in the working class, political and economic functions are not autonomous. Bureaucratic authoritarianism. That goes as well for authoritarian as for reformism as for the Communist Party. 3, the minority becomes established in the system of exploitation. It prepares a new organization, the party, which will transform the working class into an oblivious, militarized mass exploited by its own bureaucracy. 4, reformism characterized a minority which wanted to establish itself in a system of capitalist exploitation. This is how we got to Stalinism. I mean, actually, what I just read was, I'm not sure what that was about. I mean, I should have worked that out a little more, but that was a puzzling list of 4 items. Stalinism appears at the moment when capitalism has nothing more to offer the new men of the working class. Stalinism was an inevitable result of productive forces. It will therefore lead, Stalinism, will therefore lead the struggle to the death against elite power. It struggles for the advent of a new form of exploitation. It struggles, Stalinism, Stalinism, because it struggles for the advent of a new form of exploitation characterized by the domination of working class bureaucracy, the dictatorship of the proletariat, and the management of the economy under state control. All right, so that's Jean-Paul Sartre's ultra-Bolshevism, which was too much for Merleau. Like I say, the advocate of show trials and liquidations, man. Like, these people are one-upping one another through the 50s, on their at least, and early 60s, in their totalitarianism. Like, no, I'm more totalitarian than you, man. All right? And that's why we can't be friends anymore. Right? You're compromising with the liberals, right? Because you don't just advocate the raw dictatorship of the party right now. And then the internecine Marxist hooey that Merleau and Sartre are tossing at each other like in a snowball fight. It's not about anything, dude, especially as it turned out. Right? All right, so that's there's a little bit briefer episode on Jean-Paul Sartre. Where will we go from here? Well, I might pretty quick tack on Frederick Jameson and Slavoj Žižek. Alain Badiou would be well in this group. I guess the as the 20th century went on, the great totalitarians of Western philosophy became mostly leftists. Okay, like you know, after World War II, you can't really be like a Nazi sympathizer and a major philosopher. Okay, like a straight up right wing totalitarian. So I mean, maybe that'll emerge now again. Okay, but we've been in the second half of the 20th century. If you were an academic totalitarian, of which there were, you know, maybe most people were. Nah, I mean, many academic totalitarians, but they're almost all, or they're all on the left. Okay, so, but rarely has this gotten more. Well, I mean, it's pretty damn absurd in Badiou or, oh my God, Zizek, but and just gross and Jameson and shit like this. But man, it's awful in Merleau-Ponty and Sartre. Oh my God, man. And yes, I would let this kind of discredit them as thinkers. I really would. Myself, I'm not saying I won't read them, because I am reading them. I'm saying that their political views should make you wonder about whether there's a problem with all their other views. Really, man. All right. Same with Heidegger, though.